Point 4, assessment. In order to know how to improve your child's handwriting, and this is whether they are just starting off, whether they are elementary age, upper elementary, middle school, or even high school, you have to know what it is that you're trying to correct. It's not enough to just say, oh, that doesn't look neat, or that looks sloppy, make it look neater. The child won't know necessarily what steps they need to take in order to improve it. So we'll just run through some of the things that you would look for when you're assessing your child's handwriting. The first thing is posture. If your child does not have the correct posture, they're going to use a lot of energy to support their body and to support their posture, as opposed to using that energy for writing. And so that will take away from their handwriting. It's a small thing, but it does matter. The table height should be 1 to 2 inches from the elbow. So if the elbow is bent and they're sitting at the table or the desk, then the point of the elbow or the joint should be 1 to 2 inches below the table. Essentially, for a 6-year-old, you may have a table height or a desk height that's around 17 inches, and it can go all the way up to, when your child is an older child or a teenager, to 30 inches. So there's a span, and you would not want to use the same size table for your older children as you are for your younger children, or for your child in general throughout the years. You do want to make sure that you're making those adjustments. The other thing you should account for or observe and ensure that your child is doing is sitting at 90 degree angles. So you want to make sure that the foot is flat on the floor, that the ankle is making a 90 degree angle, that the knee is making a 90 degree angle, and that the hip is making a 90 degree angle. So that's for posture. Now, there are things that you would do to adjust the posture or to alter the posture intentionally for different reasons, but we'll get into that in a later point. When you're assessing, one of the things you're going to look at is directionality. So you want to make sure that the direction of the letters is going in the correct order. So you may have a child that tends to draw letters as opposed to writing them. And they're just trying to imitate what they see without actually knowing how or which stroke they start with first, which stroke they should do second, whether they should go from bottom up or up from the top to the bottom. So directionality is something you want to look at when your child is doing handwriting. You don't want to just walk away and say, okay, copy all of these and do this. At some point, you're going to, and actually initially, and then you can gradually decrease the amount of supervision you're giving, but you want to first take a look at how you have to teach how they should write the letters, and then you will observe and watch and make sure that they're doing it in the correct order. And there are some handwriting books out there that can help the child more independently follow that sequence in lettering and sequence in which stroke they do first using a color-coded pattern. So the first stroke will be one color, the second stroke will be a next color. So they'll be able to follow through the letters using the color-coded stroke key. But you do want to make sure that they are doing that. And is it 100% crucial or critical that, oh no, they're not doing the letters from top to bottom, they're going bottom to top with some of their letters? If it poses a problem, yes. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. I have one child who they do a lot of differences in the direction that they make their letters and which stroke they do first, but their handwriting is very neat. So do I need to go in and say, oh, no, you need to go from this line to that line first when their letters are completely legible and neat? No. So that's something to look at if it's causing a problem, but you do want to start from the beginning, instilling those good habits so that they know how to properly form the letter. And then if you have a middle school aged child, or a high schooler who is doing the wrong direction and it's causing a problem, then you can correct it. Sometimes that's one of the most challenging things to correct, but again, if it's causing a problem with legibility, you can work on correcting it. But instilling it initially the correct way will help to alleviate some of those things. And there are some things that you can use to work on directionality without using pen and paper. Pen and paper or writing utensil and paper can become tedious, and sometimes you may need to make things fun for your children, and you can do that with Play-Doh. You can do that with large letters on a chalkboard. So as opposed to writing it on paper, they can use a chalkboard, and if you don't have a chalkboard, you can hang a black piece of poster board on the wall and work on it that way. You can use tracing. You can use the wood or paper strips. These are the ones from Handwriting Without Tears, and they have all of the wooden strips to make the letters. And you can go over that, sequencing which line you would do first, and then tracing over that with the finger. They're Sandpaper Letters. These are the ones that we have. And for the Sandpaper Letters, again, you're giving that tactile input. So the finger, the muscle is getting input on what you're doing. So when they're tracing over that sandpaper, it's just giving a little extra input to the body, to the muscles, to the skin, to make it stick a little bit more, and so that they can remember this is how we're supposed to write the letter. You can do it in a sandbox. You can make a small sandbox. You can make a rice box. You can make a clay box and use a writing tool or use a clay tool to pull through the clay, making the letter in the correct direction. And that will give some extra proprioceptive input or extra input to the muscles to, again, help with motor memory so that the child can remember how they're supposed to make the letter. The next thing when you're considering your assessment, orientation to line. That means you want to make sure that the letter is oriented on the line, not jumping above the line, not sinking below the line, but sitting on the line. And again, this is where your pre-writing stroke practice would have helped with this. The next thing that you would look into is the spacing between letters and words. Is the spacing appropriate between the letters and the words so that it actually looks like a word and looks like an isolated letter, as opposed to having all the words run together and look like one long word, or having the letters so spaced out that it looks like separate words. Size. You want to make sure that the size of the letters is the size that it should be. And there's 3 different sizes for lowercase letters. You have the letters that start at the middle line to the lower line, if there is a middle line for younger children. As the child gets older, that middle line is removed and you just have the solid line that they write on. But if you have the 3 lines, you have the letters that go from the middle line to the lower line. You have the tall letters that go from the top line down to the bottom line. And then you have the letters that sync, and there are lots of different names for those letters, but those letters are the ones that go below the line. So you just want to make sure that if they're working on a letter that's supposed to be the size from the middle of the line to the bottom line, that they're all consistently that size. If it's a tall letter like a T or an H or an L, that those letters consistently are taller. Some may put them at the top of the line, some may go a little bit above the middle line. Either way, you just want to make sure that you're consistent. Letter formation. You want to make sure that the letter is formed the correct way, that there's no open spaces, that there's no lines where they're not supposed to be. So basically that the letter represents what it's supposed to be. Slant. There are children who write straight up and down. Now, I'm not speaking of the slant of the paper. If you are a right-handed writer, your paper will be slanted slightly to the left. If you're a left-handed writer, your paper will be slanted slightly to the right. That just helps form your letters easier and to make the slant that you choose. But however you hold your paper, the slant of your letters should be consistent. So some children choose to write their letters straight up and down. That's fine. Is it neat? Is it legible? That's what's important. Some may have a left-sided slant, and the letters are all slanted in one direction on the left. Some may have a right-sided slant. It doesn't matter. You just want it consistent throughout the sentence, throughout the paragraph, throughout the document, or throughout the passage that they're writing or copying. So if you see some letters that are leaning to the left, some that are straight, some that are leaning to the right, then that would be something that you would want to correct. Consistency, again, making sure that the sizing, the formation, the slant, the spacing, the orientation to line are consistent throughout the whole passage that they're writing or copying or tracing. Speed is something that you can look at later on. Are they improving their speed, or are they taking a significant amount of time to write one letter, one word? That can be related to other issues that can be remediated, but speed is something you will eventually want to look at once they have learned the letters correctly. Pressure. Is the pressure too light? Is the pressure too heavy? So if that's an issue, there are ways to address that too. And you want to address one skill at a time. If your child's handwriting is not as legible as you would like it to be, and you are correcting them, you're not going to say, you have to, now that you know what you're looking for, you're not going to say, oh, you want to change your letter sizing, you want to make sure it's all on the line, you want to make sure, no, you want to focus on one thing at a time. And if they're doing copy work, that's a great way to do that, because copy work doesn't necessarily have to be a long thing that they're copying. It could be one or two sentences. And now you're saying, okay, today we're going to work on making sure that all of your letters are sitting on the line properly. Then the following day, we can work on making sure that all of your letters are a consistent size. And then the following day, we're going to make sure that all of your letters are a consistent slant. So addressing one thing at a time. And then also focus on one thing as far as whether it's the content or whether it's the handwriting. There are times that you can work on both, but if a child is working on getting their creative thoughts out, you don't want to sort of distract them from that and say, okay, and as they're writing, that's not on the line. Oh, you need to do that. No, let them get all of their thoughts out first, and that could be their rough draft. And then if they're rewriting it for some reason, then they can work on copying it the correct way. So there is a sentence that you can use to assess the handwriting, and you can use that sentence every month or every couple of months or however often you want to compare how they are writing each letter. And that sentence is, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. That sentence has every letter of the lowercase alphabet in it. So you can use that sentence to assess or just to do a quick observation on how the sentence has improved over time, or how all of their letters has improved over time. Grip is important, again, not crucial, not critical. It's important, but it's not critical. So you're going to use different strategies to improve grip. I have children who write very neat that, one, does not have a great grip, but there's no need to change it at this point because the handwriting is very legible and very neat. Initially, when a child is writing, that's the time to change the pencil grip if it's impacting on the handwriting. Again, there are progression and stages that the grips go through to get more refined, more dynamic. If it's impeding or if it's impacting on the child's ability to write, you definitely want to try to correct that. But some people try to overcorrect it, and they're giving their child a million different pencil grips, which if there's one that works great or two that work great. But sometimes the pencil grips are overdone. You can use them, and it is a good thing, and it is a tool that can help. But don't get frustrated if it doesn't help. Rubber bands, you can use that to hold the fingers in, to give the fingers a guide on where they should be on the pencil. You can use strengthening even more so than a pencil grip, strengthening and making sure that the web space is open correctly, that the fatty portion of the thumb, that thenar eminence, is a very strong area on the hand and muscle group, and there are things that you can use to strengthen that. So we'll get into some of those activities that you can use. So again, remember, proximal stability leads to distal mobility. So the more strength that your child has in the joints that are closer to the body, the more easier they will be able to use the joints that are further away from the body.